Hey guys, welcome back to Contest Prep University. I'm Joe Klemczewski here with Adam Atkinson, and we are in a small series talking about how to plan a peak week. And we're gonna drill down into the specific topic of food sources, and this is gonna touch on a little bit of a review of our last series, which is on the design. So whether you're front loading, back loading, you're into a progressive linear load. So Adam, what I would ask you to start is, you mentioned in our first episode in the series that things like sodium and artificial sweeteners are things that you want to start getting a handle on. How soon do you start looking at that with a client? Just the week before, or how soon do you need that information?
Usually I like a week or two before to have a client get an idea of where their sodium's at, and I just tell them to really get an idea where your sodium's coming from. So as we adjust that during the peak week, it's not such a stressful situation. And also just letting them be aware that they will be lower on the artificial sweeteners as well. A lot of times people are taking tons of them, and when they cut back, we just see that additional fat loss usually, because they're usually having it between meals when they shouldn't be, whether it be 0-calorie drinks or things of that nature. But just kind of letting them know ahead of time so it's not such a stressful situation where they're changing everything last minute.
And it's often kind of sneaky, where you've been working with a client a long time and you ask these questions. You don't realize you have a client who's eating 8,000 milligrams of sodium or 800 milligrams, and you think, whoa, I didn't know you were that high or that low. And so it's not that you're going to instantly give them a massive change, but you might want to start tapering up or down as you approach peak week. So that's why a couple weeks in advance, I think it's really important to start looking at all of these things. But what about your position? Let's review just a little bit. If somebody is already increasing their food like you might like, or they need to come down further and keep working on tightness, how do you prepare a client mentally, or what instructions do you give them as you're getting them ready to receive the peak week plan?
Yeah, definitely telling them the goal of what the context of the peak is going to do for them. I've had clients that have more so dieted into the show, and we do that backload. So they're spending a decent amount of peak week still just trying to get tighter. But then on the other end, somebody that's ready early, food's already moving up, we're really just monitoring that glycogen ceiling and making sure we get them, maximum tightness without any spillover and as full as possible, assuming that fits their division criteria. But most of the time it does in these competitive shows.
You mentioned artificial sweeteners. Are there other foods that you're looking to make sure they have in their peak week, or things that you might be wanting to take away?
Yeah, I want to make sure some of their food's potassium rich as well. So like having things like potatoes can be good. I also want to make sure they're not loading up on a ton of fibrous sources and they're just getting all fiber and no starch. Another thing is just making sure you keep that client digestively locked in. So a lot of times the day before the show, I'll have my clients limit their fiber, but if somebody has a real hard time with digestion, I might not change that at all, just because if they're having such a hard time getting locked in digestively and we have them locked in, I don't think it's worth pulling it out just to risk potentially being backed up on show day.
Yeah, anytime you're doing something that's just dramatically different, there is a risk. And so, all the more reason just to make sure that you've asked these questions ahead of time, guys. Make sure that if you're a competitor watching this and you're managing your own peak, that you practice some of these things. It can be difficult to run through an entire peak week as a practice, because even if you've done that 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time, your body's still going to react differently 2 to 3 weeks later. But it is important to at least start observing and looking at some of these things. And as Adam and I continue in the series, we're gonna talk about some very specific things to think about as you travel, as you compete in multiple classes and all of that. So stay tuned in Contest Prep University, and we'll catch you next time as we talk about how to continue planning your peak week.